Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up because we have one hell of a podcast episode ahead of you. Welcome to Social Media Manager Confessions. This is typically the podcast episode that I feel I should be sitting down and recording with a glass of wine because things are going to get a little bit unhinged. I am going to be revealing some of the client horror stories, some of the most challenging and trying experiences I have had as a social media manager over the 6 years of doing this and running my business. And the reason I wanted to share this episode or have this conversation is, number one, it's going to be so spicy and exciting and you guys are going to be laughing along with me. But number two, I think there's some really important lessons to take away from some of these experiences. I love my job, don't get me wrong, but social media management isn't as easy breezy as you might think it is, as we like to see it on social media of, oh, I just take my laptop and I work from anywhere in the world. It's fabulous and I make so much money. Like, those things are true. We love that. But there's also the darker side of dealing with client relationships, dealing with very negative situations that are going to test your mental health. And my hope is that my fellow service providers listening today are going to listen to some of these stories and go, thank God I'm not alone. Like, I've been through that. And so has Ellen. Oh my gosh, that makes me feel so much better. So if I was just starting out my career, this is the episode that I know would be so valuable, and I can't wait to share it with you. And also, these are not just like, oh no, I put up an Instagram story accidentally on my client's account. Oops. Like, those are like, so, that's just part of being a social media manager. That is the basic confession. We are getting into the spicy confessions. We're talking about clients ending contracts with no notice. We're talking about getting fired. We're talking about crazy revision requests, people not paying invoices. There is so much juice, so much tea to come, and I hope you enjoy this episode. All right, let's start with confession number one. Oh, this was a good one. So I put this as number one because it's one of the scenarios that just like sticks in my head to this day, because for me, ethically, I'd never do this to someone in business. Let me paint a picture for you. So I'd had this client that I'd been working with for almost an entire year at that point. They were a very high ticket, high paying client. It was a really cool industry and niche to be working in, and I was personally enjoying it. However, we got about like 6 or 7 months in and the client just started ghosting me. Like, on one hand, it was great. I just kept posting content and no one edited anything, no one questioned anything. But I was also reusing the same footage like 10 times because I had no new content, and I kept kind of emailing and reaching out and trying to set up meetings, and they were just busy and they couldn't make it work, or like they were like, so sorry, we don't have any new content for you. Here's like an old photo shoot. And I didn't think much of it until I finally got on a meeting with them, and it turned out the client was getting a divorce. So they ran the business together and they were getting a divorce. So I was like, whoa, okay, now I understand why you guys have been ghosting me, and it's not me, it's you. Okay, I feel better now. And then fast forward another month and the client decides to end the contract with 0 notice on November 31st. And this is what still grinds my gears to this day, because this was the month before Christmas, like the month before the holiday season. I had 2 contractors who were helping me with this client that I pay upfront and full at the beginning of the month, that I don't want to give them 0 notice and say, sorry, I can't pay you, the client's pulled out. Like, I could never do that. And here was the client doing this to me. So it just like, ethically, it just rubbed me the wrong way. It was very much something that I don't do in business, and put such a sour taste in my mouth. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Ellen, don't you have a cancellation clause in your contract? And yes, I do, my friend. So technically, I could have kept them for another 30 days. I could have been like, that's against your contract. I need 30 days notice. Like, you need to pay me for December. And if I decided to do that, I was well within my legal rights. And that's something that I have done for other clients that decide to end contracts. However, this was a situation where I'm trying to think of a polite way to phrase this, and I can't. I was peeved. I was pissed off that this was happening to me and the client had done this. And it really rubbed me the wrong way. And that I knew that I really didn't want to work with them for another 30 days, like to push to be like, hey, you can't cancel your contract with no notice and then actually have to keep working for them for 30 days. I didn't want to do it. And luckily, this is where I was a little bit further along in my business journey. So I'd set myself up financially so that I had savings if I ever had a client contract end at the last minute. I also had other clients and other projects happening in my business. So I just pivoted all my contractors and I was like, hey, sorry, I know you're meant to be doing this, but can you spend your hours working for me on this different project? Some of those contractors I brought across to help me with email marketing and other components of my business. And it all worked out in the end, but it's just something that I'm like, oh, that's so icky. I will never do that to someone in business. Like, do not fire someone right before Christmas. Like, it's just not cool, man. It's just not cool. So that was confession number 1 that I had to start off with because it still sits in my head today. The key lesson I take away from this scenario, and actually several scenarios over the year where I've had a client end a contract, is you need to remember who your most important client is. And it's not your highest paying client. It's not even your longest standing client. It is you. Your business is the most important client. You should be your top priority, and you should be focused on building your asset, not just creating amazing businesses for your clients. Like, we love to deliver the best results for clients. We love to support them. But if you are doing that at the sacrifice of your business and you're never doing anything for yourself, you don't have your own marketing channels, you don't have your own website, that is where we need to adjust the hierarchy, adjust the ranking in our business, and realign to remind ourselves our clients could walk away tomorrow. All that time, effort, love that you're pouring into their business, it's their business. It's not yours at the end of the day. So it's really important to remind yourself that we need to focus on our business as well, and we need to be building that asset. We need to have our websites, we need to have our wait lists and all of that stuff. So that is a key lesson whenever a client ends a contract for me. Confession number 2. This is a scenario or a story I think I've shared on the podcast once or twice before, maybe once before, but we're going to throw this back to 3 years ago now. I think it was 3 years. It was post-COVID. New Zealand had just opened their borders. And during COVID, I had met my now fiance, then boyfriend, and we had moved in together. And he is originally from South Africa. So throughout the whole of COVID, New Zealand had really strict border control. Our borders were closed for like 2 years. So that was 2 years where he couldn't see his family and I couldn't meet his family. So finally, we were going back to South Africa and I was meeting his family for the first time. It was a very big trip. And to prepare for that, I'd hired 2 new contractors. So I'd like really enlarged my team. I had done so much prep work, batching content for clients so that I would be doing minimal work while I was away. And also there'd be a period of time when I was in the Kruger National Park on my safari and I'd have no internet. So everything was so set up. Like, I felt so confident going into that trip. And then, oh man, nothing ever goes according to plan, especially on a holiday. That's always when something goes wrong. But I had one of my long-term clients send me a message and say, hey, you know how you were starting a new Instagram account for me for my new e-commerce business? They were like a service provider that they were launching into products. So they had a whole new brand they were launching, and I'd done so much work. I'm talking like over 30 pieces of content, video, graphics. I'd helped them with their branding. I'd done so much content. And they came back to me and they're like, hey, you know all that stuff? We can't use that business name anymore because I actually didn't file the copyright correctly and there's been a cease and desist letter from another business. So we need to scrap all of the content. And because it was a brand new business and a brand new brand, the logo was like everywhere on every piece of content because we were really trying to build the brand awareness. And I was just looking at it like, oh my God, that's so much work. And the icing on the cake was this came in on Friday evening. And they wanted it fixed, all of the content redone and ready to go live by Monday. And I did charge a kind of revisions fee, like a redo fee, but I think it was only around $200. And at the time it felt like a lot, and I felt like really brave for asking for it, being like, hey, I can't redo all your content for free. Now when I look back, I'm just like, oh, Past Ellen, I want to slap you in the face. Like, it was your weekend. That was hours of your work. You were on a trip. Like, you were on holiday and you had to make that sacrifice. And I think the lesson I take away here is it's really important as a service provider to own up to your mistakes. And if there's something that goes wrong that's genuinely your fault, you know, do the overtime. Get the work done. Redo what needs to be redone if you have made the mistake. But this was a situation where my client had screwed up and not copyrighted the business that they were launching or trademarked, whatever the term is. Again, not my area of specialty. I'm the content creator. I'm the marketing strategist. And it was so devastating. And I was so sad about it. And I think I was really proud in the end, like at the end of the weekend when I got all the work done. I was like, look, I redid everything. Like, I did such a good job. But now that I look back, I think it was like a major blurred boundary. And I think I took too much responsibility for somebody else's mistake. And I wish what I'd done instead was, oh, I'm really sorry about that. We're going to have to push back the launch, Like, why did we have to keep Monday as the launch date? That was a huge change. And I think if it happened to me now, I would definitely have more of a boundary and just say, I'm sorry, we can't do that anymore. Like, this needs to be, fixed at a later date because I'm on holiday, and still charge the extra money that I did, but increase that even more. Okay, confession number 3 is one that I considered not putting in here because I felt like maybe it was too spicy, but then I was like, no, okay, we were going to be super honest here. We're going to be super open. And this confession is to do around contractors. And I wanted to bring this up because I think there's this glamorized idea on social media that you just build, your client base, you just build a marketing agency and then you hire contractors and outsource it. And it's so easy. Like, then you just have this multiple 6-figure business. It's not like that. Like, managing people is really hard work. It's very difficult. I had a scenario where my first contractor almost cost me my biggest client at the time. And they were doing very simple tasks for me. They were helping with engagement. So they were replying to DMs, comments, and posting comments on behalf of the client. And this particular person was brand new. They'd never done any management. They'd never worked in social media before, but I took a chance on them. I was like, oh, I can totally train them. This will be fun. And it's also cost effective for the business. And fast forward, I did a lot of training. I put a lot of work in, and the person wasn't really making progress. And the breaking point was a scenario with this client when they left a comment on behalf of the client, basically talking about their kids and their family. And it was like a comment on another influencer's account talking about travel and family and very personal things. And my client saw this and was like, WTF, why would you write a comment like this? And fair enough. And it also turned out that particular client had quite a strong view on being child-free by choice. So to see this comment from her account, her personal brand account, being like, oh yeah, I would love to go on a holiday with my kids and visit that location. It'd be so good for them. She's like, what is this? And I had done, again, put a lot of work into training this contractor, and they just still didn't get it. And it was a scenario where I really felt like I'd screwed up in the business. Like, I'd hired the wrong person and I trusted the wrong person to do this job that they really weren't capable of doing. And that was kind of like the first of many lessons when it comes to hiring and working with contractors. I feel like I could do a whole episode on this. Like, I had one person who ripped off a whole bunch of my work after working with me and copied a whole bunch of my stuff, even though like I went above and beyond to like help them with their business. They kind of took advantage of that. I had somebody else who I was paying to be a support coach in my community. And while I was away on holiday / not like being a helicopter person, like when I hire people, I just trust them to do their job. And it turned out they hadn't done anything for 3 months, even though I'd continued to pay them because it was on like an automatic payment thing. And then they didn't even want to like refund me or like really make up for all of the like months of lost work. So like I have so many scenarios I could go on about working with contractors. And I think a lot of it does come down to, not hiring the right people. And I think there is an element of me getting better as a leader and as a boss as well. But a big part and the biggest lesson I wanted to share is I really think it's worth investing in the people you hire. Like, if you list for a job, if you're advertising for a virtual assistant and you have 3 candidates and there's one who's like super junior, but is like a really good deal and would save you a lot of money, I don't think it's worth it. Like, I really do think it's worth investing. And, for the last 2 people that I've hired, last 2 contractors, I've actually ended up hiring the most expensive person. The person that I hired to be my operations manager actually negotiated an even higher rate for me than I had listed on the job. And I was like, girl, respect. And also, you so know what you're doing. And I feel so confident in hiring you. And it has been a game changer in my business. That was someone that I hired at the beginning of this year, or was it March? I think it might have been around March. And they work across my content studio and Dishing Up Digital. And it's been so, so, so cool. And even though part of me, even sometimes now when I pay their monthly invoice, I like close my eyes and like press send on the money. I'm like, oh my God, that's so much money. I know that it's helping my business and I know that it's gonna pay off, and it has paid off already. So when it comes to hiring, I really think spending the money, investing and finding good people is everything. Like, finding good people is like such a foundation for scaling. If you can't find the right people to work for you, you're not going to be able to grow. Confession number 4, I've titled the revision spiral. And this is something that's happened again a few times with clients. There's not one specific example, but I've had a few scenarios where clients have just made me change the color of like an Instagram graphic, no joke, 7 times. Like, oh, I like this in a brown. Oh, actually, no, I want it in a green. Oh, can you do a lighter shade of green? Actually, no, the lighter shade of green is annoying. Let's go for a darker shade. And actually, let's go back to, like, it does my head in. And I think for a long time, I just tried to believe the best in people and I wanted to do the best work for them. I wanted to be the best social media manager. And in my mind, that meant meeting every revision and every request that the client had. And unfortunately, I realized over time, this is going to burn you out. So the big lesson from this was introducing a revisions clause into my contract and having a set number of revisions that I will do for a client, whether that's doing, photo edits, video edits, graphic carousels, whatever it might be. Now that I think about it, there's actually one particular scenario that does stand out from client revisions. And this is what I mean by if you let boundaries slip, it builds over time and creates a lot of resentment. And this one client had been doing like many, many revisions on every single post every single week. And I got to the point where they were only paying me, I think, like $700 a month, and it was exhausting me. And I was at a point in my business where I was undercharging with all my clients. So, we all know on the Dishing Up Digital podcast, that's a recipe for disaster. So it's undercharging for a lot of my work. And this meant that I was overworking and I was working a lot of hours and I just got very, very burnt out. So I decided to enforce the boundary with the client. And I said to them, we can do X many revisions per post. If you want to do more than this, then you're going to have to pay an additional $200 per revision. And I thought it was quite a polite but firm email. And the response that I got back from them was very, very emotional. Like I definitely hit them at a wrong time, but their response hit me as a girl who was already totally burnt out from undercharging and overworking herself. And I just remember seeing this reply and it was so mean and I just burst into tears. And that was a point where I was like, yep, okay, we can no longer be the people-pleasing social media manager. We have to enforce more boundaries. So that I think was the first year, I want to say the first year full time in my business that happened. And that was a hard lesson, but a good one to learn. Now, of course, I couldn't record a social media manager confessions episode without talking about price increases, because I feel like this is one of the biggest kind of sticking points in your journey. And it's also where there's a lot of fear as service providers, social media managers, that big question of, is somebody going to say yes to my price increase or are they going to say no? And of course, I have had some experiences. Actually, no, I haven't had any experiences where someone said flat out no. Usually I have a bit of a process where I give them a lot of notice or I pitch my price increase as an upsell so people get really excited about it. And I've learned a lot about pricing strategy and how to increase your prices over time. But I do remember in my early days, like we're talking 3rd or 4th month of side hustling as a social media manager, I was doing small price increases with each new client that came in. So client A started a contract with me. I was charging them $300. Then client B would start a contract with me and they'd get charged $350. So like each new client that came through the door, I was doing these small price increases. And then I came across a client who was quite demanding. How many times have I done this like little giggle into the microphone in this episode? They were quite demanding, to put politely. Very, very particular. And I was doing full content creation for them and creating like a content schedule. And then I would send it to them to post. So in that sense, or in my mind at the time, I guess, it wasn't a huge amount of work. Like I wasn't doing full management of the account. However, content creation is a lot of work. And any content package that I do now has to be a minimum of $1,000 because of the creativity and the time that's involved in making content. And I think the rise of the UGC industry has really helped with that and helped people learn the value of just content creation, not including your management and your strategy services and all of those other layers as a social media manager. But at that time, this is again 2019, very early on in my business journey, I was charging someone $350. I hate saying this, but I also know so many people will resonate with this. I was charging $350 for a content package of, I believe it was 12 posts a month. And it was a lot of work. And I very quickly realized I was undercharging. So within a month, I think, of working together, and they came on board knowing that I was new and I was building my portfolio. So I gave them a discount for the first month. The second month, the price increased a little bit. And then it was their 5th month, I believe, working together, 5th or 6th month, that I messaged them and I said, hey, in 30 days time, I just wanted to let you know this will be going up. And I think at that point I was increasing it to $450. So again, still way undercharging, still such a good deal for this business. And the email response I got back was so nasty. And they basically threatened, they were like, if you increase your prices again, and again, this is only the second time, and they did come in on like a discount for being part of my, portfolio and being one of my first clients. The second time in 6 months that I was increasing their price. Over that time period, it's only gone up by $150. And they basically were like, if you do this again within 12 months, we will not agree and we will end the contract. And again, maybe, there's two sides to every story. You could look at a percentage increase and say, yeah, that's quite a significant price increase. In my mind, with the agreement that we had, I felt the price increase was fair. And again, I now don't do price increases that close together. I would never do 2 price increases within 6 months. I don't even do 2 price increases within a year unless the deliverables of the contract are changing. So I think I did learn a lot from that scenario. And I think maybe there was an element of me being like, yeah, okay, I could do better. I could manage that better. But it was just the way that client responded. Again, I find email communication so fascinating. Like I am someone who prefers to have like a Zoom call for anything like very serious, because I know emails can be read so wrong. And, some person might say, oh yeah, that's fine. Thanks so much for the heads up. And you might read it as, oh, that's fine. Thanks for the heads up. There's like the tone is missing in your email when you're not talking to someone face to face. Everybody can read something differently. But this message was very much just rude. It definitely wasn't me reading into it. And the threat was there. And the big takeaway for me, and I share this a lot with my students in the Dishing Up Digital School, if you have a client that responds negatively to a price increase, that's just a red flag. That is a red flag that this is not a long-term client that you want to be working with. Because I can guarantee you, someone that has an issue with paying you the money that you deserve to be paid for your work, you're probably going to have other issues with them. Like this is a client that I had regular issues with scope creep, with revisions, with like moving deadlines, last minute changes, like so many other issues. And the price increase was just one of them. And of course, eventually I did end up ending the contract with them, and I ended up replacing them with a better, more aligned client in the end. And that is the best advice I can give to anyone else going through this scenario. Okay, we're getting to confession number 6 and 7, and I truly have saved the spiciest till last. So once upon a time, I had this client, and she was really awesome. Like, she's a cool chick, but she lived a very different life to me. The way she did business was very different to me. And that's another lesson I've learned over time. Like, it's important to be in business, to be working with clients who have aligned values with you. It's not just a wish-washy, like, oh, find your dream client thing. It's actually to have, a really good relationship and to have a good dynamic working together. It is important. And this was someone who just did business in a very different way to me. And their approach to money was very different to me. And we had a lot of drama where it became a 50-50 whether or not they were going to pay an invoice. And let me just say, friends, you never want a 50-50 on whether you're going to get paid that month. That's not cool, right? And this is, again, something that's just ethically wrong to me and the way that I do business. Like, my contractors get paid before me. If I've had a month where something's gone wrong in the business, or I have a big tax bill due, or something unexpected has popped up, or, you break your microphone, which I may or may not have done when trying to film this video yesterday when I dropped it on the floor, and then you got to go buy a new one. Stuff happens. But my contractors will always get paid first. I will take a personal salary cut if I need to, if the business needs that, before I don't pay my contractors. It's just that's how I do things. And that is where it felt very wrong with this client, that I had to constantly chase for invoices. I had to constantly charge late fees. And it was just so unpredictable whether I was going to get paid or not. And I did not vibe with that. But the cherry on top was we'd been working together for a year and a half. We'd had these issues with invoices and it was kind of starting to get back on track. But, this was relatively recent that the invoices had started to get paid on time. She went out and bought a new, very expensive car. And that was such a slap in the face to be like, wow, like a few months ago, you were barely making your payments. There's still, a lot of finance chat with me about how your business is doing. But you've decided to just like, in her words, she was like, oh, YOLO, it was my birthday and I decided I just deserved this new car. And it really rubbed me the wrong way. And again, as a client that I didn't end up continuing to work with. And again, there were other many layers of different issues and red flags, boundary issues that we faced. And the other thing that I took away as a very important lesson from her was she talked to me a lot about the finances of her business. And again, I was just her social media manager. Like I was just helping with editing her content, posting her content, and giving her like strategic advice and consulting. And to be told like the ins and outs of her finances and to like have what is meant to be a content shoot with her and then have her go like, oh my gosh, we're just struggling so much at the moment. Business is slow. We even had like one conversation at one point where she was like, I'm really struggling with paying my mortgage. And I was like, whoa, like that's a really, again, personally, from my point of view, that's like a, very personal topic and that's your personal finances. And I didn't feel like we should have that relationship where she shared that information with me. And in a way, I don't think it was like an intentional manipulative thing. I don't think it was at all. It was just like, she was just an oversharer and that was how she was. But for me, I started to carry like a lot of guilt. When I sent her an invoice, I felt bad for it. And I was like, no, Ellen, you shouldn't feel bad. You've done the work and you deserve to be paid. It's not your responsibility to make sure her business is financially viable, and you shouldn't be taking responsibility for her finances, and you shouldn't be thinking about that when you send an invoice. And the lesson I took away from that was, as a boss, when I hired my contractors or when I started hiring people, I kind of have that line in place where we don't talk about finances in that detail. I think the only exception might be maybe my operations manager now. We talk about like income goals and sales goals, and she'll know when I don't meet those goals. But I never have very blatant conversations like, oh, we're financially struggling, or like, oh, we didn't make any profit this month, or oh, this happened. Like, I never have those conversations. She might have a request like for the studio, be like, hey, can we buy this for the studio? And I might be like, sorry, it's not in the budget. But that's as far as our conversations on money go. Again, with my other community managers, when I had other people who were managing my client load, when I had conversations with them, it would be, I'd be honest, I'd be, share with them often how much the client was paying. And if I felt like the community manager was going above and beyond, I might remind them and be like, hey, I don't think you should be doing that, because remember, this client only pays us $1,000 a month. That's not within your deliverables. But that would, once again, be the extent of the conversation. Sometimes I've like slipped up a little bit where maybe I'm a bit emotional and I might complain to one of my contractors that X client hasn't paid their invoice on time. And I think that's probably a boundary where I definitely need to keep that in place. But for being on the other side of it and having a client rant to you about their personal finances, it just doesn't feel super professional to me. And that's now something that I've experienced and learned from. Confession number 7. I was about to be like, this is my favorite confession. And I'm like, no, Ellen, it was actually a horrific experience. But I guess that is what makes it my favorite confession. But I have had in my career 2 scenarios where I've had to refund a client. Number 1 was my first month full-time as a social media manager. For everyone that's familiar with my business journey, I got horrifically dumped, and then I had a 7-year relationship end when I was meant to be moving to the other side of the country to live with him. So my mental health was not 100%, and I was doing some stop motion videos, just 2 simple, like a 2 video content package. And I emailed the client. I was like, I'm so sorry. I've had some things pop up in my personal life and I have not been able to film the second video. I'm processing a 50% refund for you. I'm really sorry, blah, 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 blah. And up until last year, I was very proud of the fact that that was the only time I've ever refunded a client. I've never had a scenario where someone's been so unhappy with their work that they've requested a refund. I've always been able to, work things out. And I've also never had an experience where people have been so unhappy that they've felt the need to request for a refund. And the scenario that happened last year, I won't go into too much detail because I still feel like it's pretty fresh and maybe it's something for a future podcast episode, but it was quite devastating for me to go through because at that point I'd been a social media manager for 5 years and I really thought I knew my clients, and I ended up working with someone who just was not aligned. There was a lot of issues with boundaries, and to cut a long story short, this person made me break down in tears on multiple occasions. And I just want to share for anyone listening today, if you are working with someone who bullies you and makes you cry, this is making me kind of emotional to talk about, but someone who degrades you, someone who talks down to you and has made you cry on multiple occasions. And I'm not talking about I was a little bit emotional that week, I hadn't had enough sleep or things were a bit stressful, so I had a little cry. I mean someone who breaks you and you are crying for 2 days straight. That was the scenario. That was how I was being treated. That is a time to walk away. And I made the decision in that scenario to cut my losses. And again, I had a contractor who was working with me, collaborating with me on this project. And I was like, I will pay you. I will pay you everything that you're entitled to, but I need to walk away from this project for my mental health. And I'm going to refund this client so that I can get out of this contract. And it was a 3-month contract. We got 2 months in and I was like, I'm refunding you 50%, even though I'd done more than 50% of the work, even though I'd gone above and beyond. We had a, let's call it was a content shoot kind of day. I was meant to come in and help them set up and then leave. They couldn't function without me. They couldn't do the content shoot without me. And I ended up being there for 8 hours, an 8-hour shoot day. And that was just the recurring theme. That was one of many, many things that went wrong in the delivery of that package. And it really made me question my entire business because I was like, how did I get here? I am a professional. I coach other social media managers. WTF, what has happened? How did I get myself in this boat? And I think it's an important reminder that this can happen to any of us, anybody listening at any point in your journey. There's another social media manager local to me who we chatted a bit about. She went through a similar scenario and she had the same feelings of oh my God, but I'm so good at my job. I'm such a professional. How did I not see this happening? Or how did I not see it coming? And unfortunately, sometimes people don't show their true colors until you're working with them, and you can do all of the screening, you can do all of the checks, and it can just go wrong. And the reason I wanted to share some of the story was for that core lesson of if a client or a particular project is costing you your mental health, it's not worth it. And I walked away and I actually had almost a month off. I completely stripped back on my launches. I cancelled all my launches I had planned. I was meant to be doing a business birthday promo, cancelled it. I declined any projects that came up. I reduced all of my client load back. And I had an entire month to recover from it. And I can actually see the financial impact. I did a video at the end of last year where I talked about a 40% drop in revenue. A lot of that was driven by that client scenario. Obviously, there was the refund that contributed to the loss, but it was also the fact that I just couldn't work on anything else. It was really, really tough mentally. So if someone's listening to this and they're scared to walk away from a client scenario, I hope this gives you a little bit of encouragement to be hey, this isn't worth it. This is not worth it. Sometimes the most profitable thing to do for your business is just walk away. Protect your health, protect your energy. And I'm sorry I can't tell the full spiciness of that story, but I feel it's a scenario where it might be a bit rude to do that publicly online. And I hope none of these confessions in this episode have come across like that. I don't want this to be a catty, ooh, look what happened, ooh, pointing fingers, because I think all of these opportunities have been a lesson for me to learn. And I really believe that I have learned from each one of them. And one of the things I always think about with the challenges that I face in business is it's actually made me an even better coach. And now teaching other social media managers through my program, the Dishing Up Digital School, everyone that comes to me and they're devastated by a certain scenario that they've been through or a certain challenge they're facing with a client, I'm like, oh, I've been through that. The same thing happened to me. Let me talk you through this. And I honestly believe that's part of the reason why I've gone through all these challenges, is so that I can help other people, so that I can share my lessons, so that I can coach other people through it. So yeah, I hope this episode has given you the spiciness and the tea, but also the business lessons. Every tough client that you're going to face in your business journey is just going to make you stronger. It's going to make you more clear on your business and your dreams and what you want to achieve. And it's going to, even though it doesn't maybe feel like it at the time, it's going to help you build your confidence, right? Those tears are going to lead to more confidence, trust me. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do share it with one of your business besties. If you feel like these lessons would be inspiring and helpful for them, sharing the podcast is a huge help. If you're listening over on Apple or Spotify, please make sure you rate and review the podcast and you're subscribed. We upload 3 times a month, 3 to 4 times a month, sometimes. And if you are watching over on YouTube, hello, make sure you're subscribed. I upload lots of other fun tutorials and vlogs over here on the channel. And with that all out of the way, I want to thank you for tuning in, and I will catch you in the next episode of the Dishing Up Digital podcast.